and why we needed to run this great, great nation that we have today, and why it was so important for Congress to sign it back in 1789 when the act was formed. Yeah. The Judiciary Act of 1789 was an act to establish the judicial courts of the United States. It was signed into law by President George Washington on September 24th, 1789, hence the Judiciary Act of 1789. Article 3 of the Constitution established a Supreme Court, but they left the authority to Congress, who would now create lower and federal courts as they saw fit. See, that was very important for Congress to create lower level courts because we couldn't just have the Supreme Court. They wouldn't be able to see all the important cases we have today. So Congress made district courts, appellate courts, and a lot of those two courts so that those courts can see cases and they can follow the rules of the Constitution, and appeals can be heard to higher courts if needed. The act divided the country into districts, with one court, one judge in each, along with attorneys responsible for civil and criminal actions in their districts. The act also created the Office of Attorney General of the United States. The Attorney General, a member of the Cabinet, is appointed by the President and is head of the Department of Justice. So basically, the act, like I said, it divided the country, which was only on the East Coast at the time, into districts. Since we had those districts, we would need a couple courts in the district. We would have a judge in the district, and they would hear all the cases that needed to be heard before they went up to higher courts in case those cases were appealed. If they're not appealed, they will stay where they're at. Congress created these lower courts for that exact reason. The act established that the Supreme Court would be composed of one Chief Justice and 5 Associate Justices, and that all decisions of the Supreme Court would be final. Having technical difficulties. So, the act basically established the Supreme Court and the system we have, where we had 5 Associate Justices and 1 Chief Justice. Now we have more justices. The justices basically, they hear all appeals from lower courts that will come up to them, and they hear any cases they would like to hear. These cases, when they go to the Supreme Court and are heard and a decision is made, that case is now closed. There's no more appeals. The Supreme Court is the law of the land. They make the final decision. They basically interpret the Constitution as they see fit. The Supreme Court is easily and clearly the highest court of the land, hence Supreme Court. Yeah. The Judiciary Act is very important because it is the base of our legal system today. The Judiciary Act, without it, it's very important because without the act, we wouldn't have a legal system. And without a legal system, we don't have a society because we have no way to decide who was right and who was wrong. How thorough the Judiciary Act of 1789 is really incredible because it goes into every single court system that we have, because we have one court system but multiple courts inside that system, like district, appellate, and Supreme Courts, and it explains all of them. Without this act, we would have an extremely flawed legal system, and it would be very difficult for our country to run as well as it does today. I am Demetrious from 12-2, and this is my presentation. The end.